For 25 years, no Challenger 2 crew died inside a Challenger 2 from enemy action. Not in Bosnia, not in Kosovo, not in Iraq, not in the years of patrol operations that followed. The vehicle absorbed hits, IEDs detonated beneath it, RPGs struck its flanks. In March 2003, a Challenger 2 was struck by another Challenger 2 in a friendly fire incident. Both crews survived. In the most demanding tank combat environment British forces had faced since the Second World War, Operation Telic in southern Iraq in March 2003, Challenger 2 crews fought through Basra, through ambushes, through urban combat, through conditions that destroyed lighter vehicles around them. Not one Challenger 2 crew member died from enemy fire through the hull. That record ended in Ukraine in 2023, when a Challenger 2 was struck by a Russian Lancet drone that triggered an ammunition fire. The record had lasted 25 years. No other tank in any army's inventory has a comparable crew protection record across comparable combat exposure. The vehicle that produced that record was not the most advanced tank in the world when it entered British service in 1998. It was not the fastest, it was not the cheapest. It was the most comprehensively protected. To understand the Challenger 2, you need to understand the design philosophy that came from a catastrophe. On the morning of April 26, 1944, a formation of Sherman tanks of the British 4th Armoured Brigade was struck by German Tiger tanks near Villers-Bocage in Normandy. In 11 minutes, 13 Sherman tanks, 2 anti-tank guns, and 3 armoured vehicles were destroyed. The British force was devastated. The Sherman that equipped most Allied armoured forces in 1944 was fast, it was reliable, it was produced in enormous numbers. It was also profoundly vulnerable to German tank guns. When a German round penetrated the Sherman's hull, it almost invariably reached the ammunition stored in sponsons along the hull sides. The ammunition ignited, the tank burned, the crew died. Allied tank crews called the Sherman the Ronson, after the cigarette lighter, whose advertising slogan was that it lit first time, every time. British tank designers drew conclusions from that experience that shaped every British tank design for the next 80 years. The crew compartment must be separated from the ammunition. The ammunition must not be able to ignite in a way that kills the crew. The armor must be thick enough, and the composition complex enough, that the penetrating round must defeat multiple defensive layers before it reaches the men inside. The Challenger 1, entering British service in 1983, was built on this philosophy. Its Chobham composite armour, developed at the British government's Chobham Research Facility in Surrey, and classified for more than a decade, was demonstrated in tests to defeat all anti-tank projectiles then in service. The Challenger 2, entering service in 1998, was not an upgrade of the Challenger 1. It was a new design that shared only the name and the Chobham philosophy. Vickers Defence Systems designed it. BAE Systems later acquired the manufacturing rights. The vehicle shared only approximately 5% of its components with the Challenger 1. The turret incorporated the second-generation Chobham armour known as Dorchester, whose specific composition remains classified to this day. British officials say only that it significantly exceeds the protection of the original Chobham and that its resistance to kinetic energy penetrators and shaped charge warheads was demonstrated against all known anti-tank weapons at the time of development. The gun was the Royal Ordnance L30 120mm rifled cannon. The choice of a rifled rather than smoothbore gun was the Challenger 2's most controversial technical decision. NATO had standardized on the Rheinmetall 120mm smoothbore used by the Leopard 2 and M1 Abrams. The smoothbore fired kinetic energy penetrators more effectively than a rifled barrel because the spin imparted by rifling degraded the accuracy of the fin-stabilized rod. Britain argued that the rifled gun fired a wider range of ammunition types, including high-explosive squash-head rounds that the smoothbore could not use. The Hesham round, crushing against armor before detonating and sending a shockwave through the metal, was effective against concrete fortifications and light armor in ways that kinetic energy penetrators were not. The argument was never fully resolved. British tank doctrine in the 1990s anticipated combat in environments where urban fortifications and light armor were as common as main battle tanks. The rifled gun served those scenarios better. The engine was a Perkins CV-12 diesel producing 1,1200 horsepower in a vehicle weighing 62 tons. The power-to-weight ratio was 19 horsepower per ton, lower than the Leopard 2's 27 and the Abrams 25. Critics pointed to this figure as evidence that the Challenger 2 was underpowered. What the critics missed was that in combat, maximum power-to-weight ratio matters less than the sustainable power delivery and drivetrain reliability that allow a crew to operate continuously across an extended engagement. The Challenger 2's drivetrain proved reliable under the extreme conditions of Iraqi desert heat and dust in ways that lighter vehicles operating alongside it did not match. The fire control system incorporated a thermal imaging gunner's sight, a thermal imaging commander's sight, allowing independent target acquisition, a laser rangefinder, and a ballistic computer. The system was stabilized for firing on the move. The Challenger 2's ability to engage moving targets at 4,000 meters while itself moving at 40 kilometers per hour was demonstrated in exercises that British Army publicists eventually tired of describing because the results seemed implausible to observers who had not witnessed them. Operation Telic, the British component of the 2003 Iraq invasion, deployed approximately 120 Challenger 2s in southern Iraq. The battle for Basra was urban warfare in conditions of heat, dust, and dense civilian environment that tank designers had not optimized for. Challenger 2s fought through Basra's streets, absorbed RPG hits on their side armor, drove over IEDs that damaged their tracks, continued fighting. In one engagement on March 25, 2003, a single Challenger 2 of the Royal Scots Dragoon Guards, call sign 20 Alpha, was struck by 15 RPGs in a single engagement in the Basra suburb of Abu al-Qasib, along with 3 MILAN anti-tank missiles. The Challenger 2 kept fighting. The crew were shaken, the external fittings were damaged. The vehicle continued to operate. 15 RPGs and 3 MILAN missiles, no crew casualties, no penetration of the hull. That engagement became the definitive demonstration of what Dorchester composite armor could do against weapons that would have penetrated any other vehicle in the coalition inventory. The detailed analysis of that engagement was briefed to NATO defense ministries. Several countries accelerated Challenger 2 export evaluations on the basis of it. The Oman contract for 38 vehicles had already been signed in 1993. No further export contracts materialized. The cost of the Challenger 2 and British government export policies limited the vehicle's commercial appeal in ways that performance alone could not overcome. Ukraine received an initial tranche of 14 Challenger 2 tanks in the summer of 2023, followed by additional vehicles to bring the total to approximately 28. Britain also provided a significant stockpile of ammunition, including the H round that the Challenger 2 alone among NATO's frontline tanks could fire. Ukrainian crews trained at Castle Martin in Wales. The training emphasized the vehicle's capabilities and limitations honestly. The Challenger 2's limitations in Ukraine were real. The Challenger 2 is designed for defensive warfare. Its doctrine assumed that it would mostly be firing from prepared static positions. Its weight of 62 tons made river crossings and soft ground operations challenging. Its logistical requirements for specialized parts were greater than more numerous platforms. The capabilities were equally real. In Ukraine, Challenger 2 crews reported engaging Russian vehicles at ranges where Russian optics could not identify the Challenger 2 as a threat. The thermal imaging and laser rangefinder allowed engagements at 3,000 meters in conditions of poor visibility that Russian vehicle commanders could not match. The Dorchester armor held against direct fire hits that would have penetrated the turret of a T-72. Then, in September 2023, a Challenger 2 was struck by a Lancet loitering munition that hit the Bustle ammunition store. The ammunition cooked off. The vehicle was destroyed. The crew survived. The tank that had never lost a crew member to enemy fire through its hull in 25 years and multiple wars ended its perfect record in the way British designers had always expected it might eventually end, not from a penetrating round through the frontal arc, from a top-attack weapon targeting the ammunition. The blowout panels worked, the bulkheads held, the crew got out. The tank was gone. The crew came home. That was always the design. That was always the point.